Huffman Prairie Flying Field is located on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is just a few miles from Wright State University. And that is the site of the Wright Brothers experimental flying field that they used in 1904, 1905, and all the way up through about 1915. It was the site of the Wright Brothers School of Aviation, where they trained over 100 pilots to fly. There are so many stories about Huffman Prairie Flying Field, especially during the years that Wilbur and Orville were experimenting, trying to perfect the airplane in 1904 and 1905. They tried to keep their experiments secret at the flying field. They would actually ride the traction line, the trains, out from Dayton to the flying field. And after a while, people started to realize what was going on at Huffman Prairie Flying Field, and the conductors on the trains would actually hold up their trains to try to arrive at the same time that the Wrights would be flying. And the Wrights tried to time their flights so that nobody could see them. So you've got this interesting activity going on where the public really did want to get a look at what was going on, and the Wrights were trying to keep it secret. By 1910, of course, the Wrights had flown in Europe and had become famous worldwide. And people were flocking to Huffman Prairie Flying Field. And so we have photographs of lots of townspeople lined up along the fence row. They had come out to the prairie in wagons, horse-drawn wagons, in bicycles, any way they could get there. And we have these wonderful photographs of the pilots who were learning to fly, clowning around for all these spectators along the fence row while they were waiting for the wind conditions to be right. Our Wright Brothers collection has lots of letters, original letters written by members of the Wright family to one another, or correspondence between their friends and family to the Wrights, and back and forth. And those letters reveal so many stories about what was going on in the family. One of my favorite letters that we received about 5 years ago is a letter written by Milton Wright, the father of the Wright brothers, to a niece of his who lived in Indiana. And Milton is writing this letter in September of 1910. And just a couple months before that, in May, he had taken his one and only flight in an airplane. He was in his 80s, and he flew with Orville at Huffman Prairie. And he's writing to his niece about it. And I got really excited when I started reading this letter, thinking Milton is going to really heavily describe what it was like to take off and fly over Huffman Prairie and land again. And he only says one line. He says, "I was no more afraid than if I'd stepped into a buggy." I think that the Huffman Prairie Flying Field represents something tangible that people can go and visit. They can stand there and look out across the prairie, and they can also look at the original photographs of what took place there. You know, if you stand at the prairie today, it just looks like a prairie. There are plants. You can hear the birds singing. You can take a walk on the trails around there. And it's a prairie. It's a nature preserve. But if you look at the photographs and keep that in your mind as you stand there and look at the prairie, you can almost hear the sounds of the spectators along the fence, or them starting the engines on these flyers, or the pilots hollering back and forth to one another. You can hear the whir of the propellers. And I think the significance of the prairie is that it connects people to a site, yes, but it also connects them to an event, something very unique that happened in Dayton that represents this new invention, flight, that was going to change so much in our world. So it's a combination of standing in the physical place, but then also realizing and trying to imagine yourself standing there along the fence row with all those spectators and seeing something totally new happening in front of you that you'd never seen before.
Dancing around, dancing around. Oh, how he'd hold her head on his shoulder, and oh, how he'd tease and he'd dip with his knees. He'd trot her to a corner and he'd steal a little squeeze while they were dancing around, all around, all around. They were the talk of the town.
Brought to you by the Wright State University Friends of the Libraries.